Welcome to part one of a powerful two-part series of The Lasting Mission. Mission Roll Call CEO Jim Whaley sits down with Senator Greg Landsman, a congressional leader and advocate for Voices for Non-Opioid Choices, a nonprofit fighting for the health and dignity of our veterans and their families. Stay tuned and join us in this critical conversation.
As you all know, we are the voice of the American veteran. We amplify your voice on important subjects that affect veterans across our community, their families, their caregivers. And the subject we're talking about today with Representative Landsman from Ohio is a very important one, and one that affects literally millions of Americans across our country. And that's about opioid use, misuse, how that affects our communities. Congressman Landsman is on the cutting edge of legislation. He's been working with a number of key organizations to address this issue. But before we turn it over to the congressman, and I'll ask him to say a few words, is just to give everybody a little sense of the impact here. 3 out of every 4 drug-related overdoses involves opioids. You think about it, 3 out of 4. And in the last 20 years, we've lost 500,000 Americans due to opioid overdoses. It's a plague. And it affects every community, but it really affects the veteran community and rural communities. And Congressman, I know you're doing some great work. Can you tell me a little bit first about yourself and how you got involved with this important cause?
Yeah, so I represent. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate. I represent the first congressional district in Ohio, so Southwest Ohio, Cincinnati, and then the suburbs of Cincinnati, and then rural Ohio. So we have a little bit of everything, which is why the district's so great. So it's one part city, one part suburbs, one part rural Ohio, sort of farm country, and it's home to a great VA facility and tens of thousands of veterans. I serve on the Veterans Affairs Committee and have worked with a bunch of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to focus on a couple of things that I think are obviously really important for veterans based on what I hear back home. One is just care and making sure the VA is as effective as possible, and that extends to the community providers, and making sure that we're providing the best care possible. Two is ensuring that our veterans, get the help they need, and so trying to get the VA nationally and locally to do more engagement and outreach. So not just posting something on their website and hoping somebody sees it, but really doing engagement outreach. We are part of that. We do a lot of that work. We're trying to get the VA to create a benefits calculator. So essentially, you would just, as you're scrolling through whatever, or you're listening to this podcast, there'd be an ad or something that would say, hey, you may be eligible, and it would give you a link, and it would just say, here's the basic service information, and here are all the things that you are probably eligible for.
Right.
Because, a lot of it has to do with education, job placement. I mean, some of it's obviously medical.
Yeah.
A lot of work around the issue of suicide prevention. We're losing way too many of our veterans who have gotten so isolated, and they take their own lives, and it's devastating for families and for communities. And so we're working on a bill that would take the things that we know are working, because we have incredible programs that have seen incredible success with some of the, and then you have programs that don't work. And yet we're spending billions of dollars across the board, and those programs that work don't get any more money than those programs that don't work, and we're not sharing those best practices. And then this bill is a bill to ensure that our veterans can get pain relief without having to deal with any opioids. And so there's a bunch of non-opioid pain relief options that are available to a whole host of people, but not necessarily veterans. And so our bill with Derek Van Orden, Republican from Wisconsin, would ensure that you can get all of the relief you need and or want, and most, if not, most of those options are non-opioid based. So because as you said, it is a crisis. It's a crisis, particularly in Ohio, particularly in southeastern Ohio. And I'll just say this, my background, I didn't serve. My grandfather did. I was like obsessed with my grandfather's service. He was a World War II veteran. He was a POW. I was just obsessed with the story and just the man. And I hope that as long as I'm in Congress or doing public service, this is a huge part of what I do because of what you all have done for this country. And then almost all of the veterans I know come back and continue to serve their communities. It's just a remarkable group of human beings. And I want to be part of doing as much as I possibly can, including this bill.
Well, we appreciate everything that you're doing. And when you think about the, nearly 16 million veterans that we have in our country, but then when you really think about their families
Yeah.
and their extended families, that number is probably 25 to 30 million
Yeah.
veterans and their families. And the cost of this opioid, I was looking at some stats in prep of talking to you with it, and I knew the number was high, but I mean, when you look at, I think it's $1.5 trillion in opioid epidemic cost in the U.S. I mean, $1.5 trillion is probably higher than what that is. That's an enormous. That's just the financial cost. Take away the heartbreak, the loss of a provider, family members, things like that. And I know you're working with, and we're working with Voices for Non-Opioid Choices to help advocate
Yeah.
this important legislation. Talk to me a little bit how you got involved with them, and what you would want the listeners of this podcast, which is, we have 1.6 million veterans follow us. So what's a message you want to get to them and to Congressman Van Orden's constituency as well?
The message I think is engage us, reach out, show up, demand of us, that we listen and engage, because I think most members of Congress, there are obviously some members of Congress that aren't great about, what happens when people reach out to them, their constituents, others. But this is it. I got involved in this particular issue, and most of the issues on veterans. I knew I wanted to work on veterans issues. I had a particular interest in and getting to the heart of the veteran suicide issue, and keeping more and more of our veterans here with us and with their families. But this particular issue came to me because a group of folks from my district said, "This is really important. We want you to work on it."
Uh-huh.
And, the answer is immediately, yeah. You read it, you want to make sure it's legitimate. And it's, it was immediately legitimate. There are a whole host of non-opioid alternatives in terms of pain management that aren't on the list of approved options for veterans.
Right.
We'll put them on the list.
Right.
And, Van Orden and I, we're going to pursue this bill, but we're also saying to the VA, just put them on the list. You don't need an act of Congress to add these to the list.
And what do you think of the reluctance is? I mean, it seems like the VA, we all have challenges with the VA, right, as veterans. And some VA hospitals do a wonderful job, and the people there are great, and they're committed to the cause. But we all know it's a bureaucracy. It's $500+ billion in cost, and it's not very effective. And you commented on it. It's one of my pet peeves. Sometimes you got to stop programs that aren't working to fund the programs that are going to work.
Yeah.
Or that have.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One is, it's a bureaucracy. Bureaucracies are just difficult to manage and/or get decisions made quickly. Two, and this is, I think, really important. When we get frustrated, and I'm talking about members of Congress, we usually just yell at these folks, and we want to get them in trouble. And I think that creates this disincentive to act.
Mhm.
right? Because, well, I'll get in less trouble if I don't if I don't do if I do a bunch of stuff, I'm more likely to get in trouble.
Right.
So I do worry that sometimes we tackle these things by saying we're gonna expose, we're gonna bring you in and we're gonna have you testify and we're gonna yell and scream, and I get the frustration. Trust me, I do. I just worry that it does create a culture where people don't want to do something by in this case, by simply adding some of these medications to their approved list. Now, I don't know if that's true. I know that that sometimes is part of the inaction in these bureaucracies is people who just don't want to rock the boat because they don't want to get yelled at.
Right.
And so I do think we have to take it on an approach where and this is our best practice bill for preventing veteran suicides, is we're saying, look, we're not going to be mad. We're not going to try to punish anyone. We're just saying, hey, these things work. We know they work. We want all of our programs to use them. From
Yeah.
now on, if you get money, use these things that work. So you can, we're not, you know what I'm saying? So that people want to participate and get better. And that is a culture thing. But either way, add these medications to the list and help veterans, and be committed to reducing that number among veterans, which is the number of veterans who get addicted to opioids. And this is the case for so many people. It's not their fault. It is not their fault. Everyone thinks, oh, they must have done something. They didn't do anything wrong. They got hurt,
Right.
and then they got prescribed medicine they shouldn't have been prescribed.
Yeah,
Uh,
because it is the default medication for pain relief, right? To your point, and
yeah, I
it's
mean,
easy to get addicted.
this is a pharmaceutical question. Like, there are people who make a lot of money off of this. That's terrible, and they should not have more of a say than anyone else. In fact, you know, um, because we have non-opioid options, there's a question as to whether or not we need opioid options.
Exactly. And well, and I think there was a New York Times article that came out recently about them finding out that a lot of the companies that distribute the opioids were paying doctors directly
They
to
made
go ahead.
so much money
Right.
off of not just people's pain, but their addiction, and it is one of the worst scandals. And Purdue Pharma here, and I want to make sure I don't want to get sued, but I'm pretty sure it was Purdue that ultimately ended up in court because they were they were at the heart of this, but they weren't alone. They just weren't alone. These companies end up making a lot of money off this stuff, and people get addicted and they make money off of that. It's awful.
Yeah, and you can see the slippery slope that gets veterans into this position where they've served their country, they left service, the transition didn't go very well. They have an injury. They get on an opioid. They get addicted to that. As you pointed out, they get isolated, separated from their tribe. Right, those group
Yeah.
of people that took care of them, and they had a common cause. And now they're very isolated. Maybe they're in a rural area, maybe they're not. But either way, they're isolated. And of course, then they go down that slope of dark thoughts so that
Yeah.
eventually can lead to them attempting to take their life or being successful in taking their life.
That's
And
right.
it just seems, here where they were the, you know,
Heroes. I mean,
heroes full of
they're the hero
pride.
of the they're
Yeah,
the hero of the story. And they did what, uh, not only we asked them to do this, we begged them to do this, we needed them to do this, and then they come home, and maybe they're celebrated for a period of time, but then people start to lose focus, and this goes beyond the medication issue. We have got to do a better job of pulling them back into community, or just being showing up and being part of the community that they're building. And we have a veterans group that we work with on a regular basis. We do a whole host of events with them, including the Veterans of the Year award ceremonies, which just it helps us identify new folks to lift up. But you know building community and getting folks out of this place of isolation is important for everyone, including veterans.
Well, and they're all great points. We couldn't agree more. And we hear that from our veterans. One thing that we do very often is we send out polls
Yeah.
to all of
Yeah.
our veterans, and then we use
Yeah.
that polling to work with
Yeah.
folks like you and to work with the Senate and the VA to say, hey, this is what we're hearing from our veterans, and we can break it down by congressional district.
Yeah.
And this is an important issue to veterans because it affects so many. And if you think about it, I think we have a challenge in this country where we think of problems in a stovepipe kind of fashion. Well, this is a problem and that's a problem, and then we'll fix this problem. The challenge is we don't look at it holistically. And the fact is when you have a percentage of veterans that are addicted to opioids and they're back in their community, and the community sees that, you're less likely as a coach or a mentor or a parent is to recommend military service to those that you love when you see how it ended up. So all these things are linked together. So when you think about how we can be helpful to the VA, and we want to be helpful to the VA,
Sure.
to your point, it doesn't no one any good for us to just yell, point out all the bad things that they have going on without highlighting the great things that they have going on. But
Yeah, it's kind of a balancing act because you also you got to go advocate and fight, but you want to keep them as a partner because at the end of the day, we need them to provide these services and to work with us. So I agree.
right. But when you look at the increase in cost
Yeah.
of investment, let's say, of the U.S. in the Veteran Administration, and it's gone up. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's gone much higher percentage-wise than the number of veterans served. So veterans numbers are dropping, but the numbers for the cost associated with the VA is increasing. How do you see this subject of opioids contributing to that, affecting that?
Yeah,
And
I'm not sure. I mean, I've seen different data, so we'll have to, um, share some of that with each other after, or maybe as part of the follow up that the administration has gone up, or the number of folks, and maybe this was just as part of the additional resources related to the PACT Act support. Yeah, because that number of veterans did go up, and as a result, they had to hire more doctors and so on and so forth. So maybe the base, uh, um, I'll need to get into that because I always assumed it was the PACT Act, kind of trajectory, which is you have to hire more people when you have more veterans being served, and there were more veterans being served as a result of the PACT Act. But if you take away the PACT Act and you just look at sort of general services, yeah, I'll have to. If that's the case, and I don't um, think you have any reason to not tell me the truth. That is an issue, and I'm not sure I can explain it other than the PACT Act is helping to get more and more veterans in the door, and so hopefully that will make a huge difference.
right.
I'm one of those folks who believes in this effort to make government more efficient should happen and should be bipartisan, because I think we get to better, you know, um, results if it is bipartisan. And one of the ideas I have said is like you got to improve these websites, make it easier. People got to get in and find out what they're able to, what the services are immediately that they're eligible for. We got to get them enrolled faster. When they have a claim, we got to speed that up. Use AI, use whatever to speed that up. And yeah, look at the bureaucracy, and I tend to think, you know what? I doubt we have too many frontline workers. I suspect there's probably maybe one too many managers, and that contributes to the bureaucracy. But that's just what I've seen. So I think what this would do is simply just provide better options
Mhm.
for veterans in terms of dealing with their pain, so they don't get addicted, and that would ultimately reduce costs. It would just reduce the need for veterans to continue to come back for that particular issue because now they've dealt with their pain and they're not addicted to anything.
Right. Right.
So
No, it's a good point. One of the things we're trying through our website new design and is to make it easier for veterans to find other organizations to join. So what we're trying to do is highlight other veteran support organizations so veterans can find their path to either volunteering, getting involved in their community, finding their tribe again, but also, you know, we've done a number of YouTube videos in our university system that we have to help veterans kind of navigate the VA. And to your point, it's a difficult process.
yeah.
Maybe
One thing you
go
one
ahead.
thing yeah, no, sorry. One thing is, like, each member of Congress has, or at least we do, we have a person who just works with the VA, a caseworker. So if you have any issues whatsoever, or just start with us, I mean, you shouldn't have to, but, like, just so you know, your member of Congress, and everyone has one, should have caseworkers who help with Social Security and Medicare and passport issues, all the federal stuff.
Right.
That includes the VA. So anytime there's an issue, it's just like, hey, come with us.
Right.
We'll kick that door down with you. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. And that's great
So
that you do that.
yeah, that's one. I mean, and there are advocates too, and I suspect you promote those supports. But I think the key is just build community, build community, build community, because you can't. There's very little you can do on your own in life. Period.
Right.
And the bigger your community, the easier it is to get things done,
Right.
including the VA. So, like, if you're part of any number of veteran groups, and maybe they don't even describe themselves as a veteran group, but it's just a group and it includes veterans,
Mhm.
and something comes up with the VA, someone's got the answer in that group. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And if you think about it, across the nation, there's anywhere between 30 and 40,000 veteran support organizations. Now, the vast majority of those are very small nonprofits that are helping in a very geographic location, right? So maybe in your district, they're in Cincinnati, downtown, and they're helping
Yeah.
veterans
Yeah, exactly.
come together for a lunch and learn or something like that. Maybe they provide some service to get to the VA, but they're very small organizations. But if you think about it and you step back as an agency, if you had so many nonprofits supporting any other agencies, people would say, well, why do we have that agency, right? No, certainly I'm not advocating that we don't need a VA. We do. It plays a vital role. But the fact that you have so many veteran supporter organizations filling in gaps, to me, is an indication that there needs to be a wholesale look on what they do, how they do it, how they work with nonprofits that get to the community, because they can't be everywhere. You need those small VSOs in small towns that are going to reach out to veterans. How do you resource them, help them, partner with them? Do you have any thoughts on that or any kind of impressions to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're doing it. I mean, I think this podcast and building this community is part of what all of these organizations, the VA and anyone doing big service delivery work, they've got to change the way they approach the work. Most of these organizations and most VAs, it's a come to us approach. We're here. Uh, we're in a certain mile radius of you. Come to us and we'll help you. And for some people, that's fine. But for a lot of people, it does not work. And the best organizations are the ones who find a way to get out into community, build relationships, show up in people's at people's VFW, or they show up at this dinner or that breakfast, or they show up in their social media feeds, or they show up on their podcasts, or or whatever radio station. I mean, they're out there doing the kind of engagement and community building that leads to not just more and more people coming through their doors, but the kind of trust
Hmm.
that is so important to deliver any kind of care.
Right.
And so I think this is across the board. Kind of, this is an issue that all of these organizations, social services, government agencies, VA, but not limited to the VA, they've got to get out of this you come to us mentality
Yeah.
and appreciate that they've got to get really good at finding folks, connecting with them where they are, and then building a relationship and getting
Right.
them in the door.
Yeah. And there's really no excuse not to, right? With all the technology we have and the
No, it's
ability
easy.
to do these things, you
It's
can do
just
that.
you gotta try and you'll fail and, maybe yeah, exactly. It's not expensive, because of social media and the internet and YouTube and, being able to do a podcast, you could or jump on somebody's podcast, all that stuff is but you gotta go do it, and you gotta try and keep trying until you start getting some traction.
As we get settled into a new Congress here pretty soon, share with me how you feel about the great bills you're working on and the
Yeah.
subject of opioids. How can we be helpful? What do you see as some of the obstacles? What do you see as some of the opportunities?
Yeah, so the opportunities are that the Veterans Affairs Committee is full of really good people, and on both sides, that it's one of the most bipartisan committees. Rarely is there conflict. There's debate, we argue, but there isn't like people yelling at each other. And what we need is just help getting the speaker, the leadership, to put our bills on the floor, because we pass a ton of bipartisan legislation out of committee, and then you gotta wait for the speaker to put it on the floor, and it's kinda like, well, we're up here. It's not like there's not enough room on the agenda.
Right.
Just give us a vote on this stuff, and getting the leadership, on both sides to prioritize these, bipartisan veterans bills is that's where I think we could,
Yeah.
use the
I,
most help, and making sure the veterans know that we are here to help, and demanding of each member of Congress that they focus on casework, and in particular, their veterans, that if a veteran calls in, you got a couple hours to call them back. You know what I mean?
right. Yeah. And we share your frustration sometimes, right? Because to us in the veteran community, there's a sense of urgency. When you're
Yeah.
losing, anywhere from 17 to 25 veterans a day to suicide, and those numbers continue that awful track to being hundreds and thousands of veterans every year. And then you see the opioid stats where, 3 out of 4 of those overdoses is the result of opioids. So there is a sense of urgency, but sometimes, as you know, when you walk up there and you're in DC and you're meeting with people, there's not a sense of urgency on
No,
these subjects, and we
it
think,
drives me crazy. It's the thing that I get most frustrated with. It's not the partisanship. It's not the eccentric members and their, the funny, crazy things they do on social media. It's the lack of urgency, um, and it is killing people.
yeah, there's a stat I'm looking at right now, and I'll just read it verbatim so I don't mess it up. Veterans are particularly affected by opioids epidemic between 2010 and 19, so a 9-year span. The rate of drug overdose mortality among veterans increased 53%, with 93.4% of those deaths involving opioids.
That's insane,
I mean, that number,
and all avoidable.
all avoidable. And if that doesn't give you a sense of urgency, I question why you're there. I
Correct.
mean, what other subject is
I mean,
is
the number of bills that we voted on, or in this Congress, that would shock you, and how n irrelevant they are to our lives is it's a lot. Yet and we yeah, one of the things that has to change about this place is just its output. Like, we are producing, we were on break which was a couple weeks ago, when we went into the election break, right? So this was in the fall.
Right.
I asked my staff to pull the number of bills that were ready for a vote. Done. They've passed out of committee. They've been vetted. They've been quote unquote marked up. All the changes have been made. The I's have been dotted. The T's have been crossed. Ready to go. There were 698 bills ready to go. And I don't think but a handful of them have been voted on.
Yeah. And how many out of those 690, I'm putting you on the spot mathematically, how many of them do you think directly affected or addressed veterans issues? 10,
I
15?
sorry, I've been fact checked. It was 592, so almost 600 bills.
Okay.
I would guess that 50 to 100 of those bills affect veterans.
Right.
Yeah, that might be high, but I'm throwing in there things that affect veterans outside of the VA.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah, and
bipartisan
these
veteran
things
bills.
that organizations have worked, they've negotiated in good faith, they've compromised, and to your point, they're ready to be voted on and move on, right? I mean, the committee's
Yeah,
bipartisan. They've said this is something that's going to positively affect veterans, um, and then you put that and compare that with veterans that are having a hard time with transitions, veteran homelessness, and all of those sort of things, and it overshadows really so many veterans that have transitioned well and are back in their community as policemen and firemen and coaches and mentors and doing great
incredible.
things,
Yeah.
right? Running for Congress, all those sort of things to continue their service. But this is a frustrating point. Um, I will-
I'm optimistic. I will tell you, I do think that it's still so much has become so partisan, and veterans it remains bipartisan, which is great. I mean, it's sort of a protected, it's a protected class, if you will, and so that's an opportunity. We just gotta push harder.
yeah. How can our listeners and how can we direct people to find out more about your legislation and on this subject?
So, on our website, we post all that. I don't. It's
So
just
we could link to you on the
yeah,
site after we post this so
yeah,
people could
sure,
read about it
yeah.
and find out
And
more.
I think we have a veterans page, but yeah, we do. We have a veterans page. I would hope so. So yeah, and then and the veterans committee in the House has a list of all the bills that have been it's marked up, meaning it's ready for a floor vote. We
Right.
voted on it in committee, and it's a lot of bills that the Congress needs to pass. And the Congress is about over. The new one will start in January, and all of us resubmit our bills, and we have to start over. And it should be the priority of the next speaker and leadership teams to be faster and have us work. We're up here 3 or 4 days a week, and we're only voting a couple hours each week. Make us vote 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours,
Yeah.
whatever it takes.
And these are important subjects as we talked about. There's a sense of urgency about them. And I guess the other thing I would add is, we live in a dangerous world. I mean, you pick up the newspaper on any given day, and there's things going on that it gets us closer and closer to big conflicts and
Yeah,
issues like that. And I would say that veterans issues have a direct impact on recruitment issues. And
for
as you
sure.
know, a lot of organizations in the armed services are having trouble with recruitment
Yeah.
and continue to have that challenge. And these issues are important.
One thing we did get done last week, and it passed yesterday in the Senate, was the National Defense Reauthorization
Right.
bill, which it's a 15% pay raise for junior officers, which should help.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. When you think about that, and one of the numbers I use is one that comes off the DoD website, and that is that 24% of active duty military have food insecurity issues, which really equates to financial insecurity issues, right? If you can't buy food, it's because you don't have money.
That's why I threw that money or threw that those kinds of bills into my calculation of 50 to 100 bills, because you have bills in there that would tackle food, insecurity issues, and helping people with food assistance, or just pay,
Right.
getting pay up, which I know is better. We got to get pay up across the board, and for a lot of our veterans, they come back and they continue to serve in some public, capacity, as you mentioned, as a police officer or a firefighter. And the pay for these folks is terrible. I mean, it's not terrible, sorry. It's just not as competitive.
Right.
And with these private sector companies, they can mess around with pay faster than we can. But when we have an opportunity, whether it's Congress or the state or city governments, you've got to get the pay up. These
Right.
people need to see better pay across the board.
Well, and I don't think any American is proud of the fact that if you've raised your hand and swore allegiance and you're serving your country and wrote that blank check, no one's proud of the fact that you can't figure out a way to get groceries to your family that week.
Terrible.
I
It's
mean,
absurd. Yeah.
it's an embarrassment, and like you said, it's absurd.
Yeah.
Um, we appreciate everything you're doing, Congressman. It's clear that your heart's in the right place and you're working hard and getting others to work hard on important bills and legislation that will have life and death consequences,
Yeah.
literally, when we think about this opioid epidemic. Um, what's I'd like to end giving the floor to you to maybe tell the audience the one thing or two things or whatever that you want them to remember from this podcast, ways that they can get involved, things that they.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, the thing that has been has crossed my mind in the last couple of months is, we've been trying to close out this term, and I want to make sure that it counts for folks back home and the people I represent. So I've been sort of rushing, pushing, working really hard to get a few of these big bills done. And I was thinking about it in the context of this conversation, and that is, we have a certain amount of time on Earth, right? And it's, I think that's God-given time. God gives us an amount of time, and whether there's an expectation or not, I think there is. We should use every minute of it, and to get as much done for one another as we possibly can. That to me is, and that starts with your family. For me, my wife and my children, and then you think about the community that sort of surrounds your family. But as a veteran coming back, there's a sort of a world that you kind of own. And as a member of Congress, own in the sense that you're in a position to make it better.
Right.
And I think the idea of appreciating that we do have this time, and you use it as wisely as possible to get as much done as you possibly can for other people, will make you very, very happy. And
Yeah.
I think it's what it's all about.
Well, thank you. It's a great note to end on. And I would urge all of our viewers across the country that represent every state. There's a sense of urgency here. Time is not our friend. We need to uh, get with our representatives, let them know how we feel about them, share with them this important legislation and get behind it and ask them what they're doing to support it. Um, as a 501c3, we're advocating for veterans every day. We take your voice and we amplify that. We don't filter it. We share it with the press. We share it with elected officials and those in positions to make a difference at the VA and the DoD. So get involved. Share this podcast with your friends and family, and get involved and join Mission Roll Call and help your fellow veterans.
We will
Thank
send it out to all of our folks. I really appreciate what you're doing, Jim. All of you,
Appreciate it.
the whole team.
And And Merry Christmas to you and your family. And thank you so much for joining the podcast
You
today.
too. You bet.
Thank
Thank you.